School's in session.
Aquanini Tampawag. What's up, tribe? It's your boy, Two Dogs. You know where to reach me. Anchor.fm/Two Dogs. Tribe, do I have a little ditty for you today? Today, you're going to ride shotgun with me while I critique a debate I had with Guerrilla Hebrew of the Sicarii Hebrew Israelites. The subject, Isaiah 53. Who is the suffering servant? Me and Guerrilla Hebrew battle it out while we try to get a better understanding of who the suffering servant is in Isaiah 53. So, tribe, you're in for a good one. We went ahead and we tried to fill you with as much information as we could, so we have used clips from offline. So, you will see a variety of clips from all across the internet and all across YouTube in order to make sure that we get the fullest answers to our questions. So, tribe, sit back, relax, and help me critique myself.
Understood not. What? Understood not.
Go ahead.
But despised it. What's going on, brother? You got a question? You got a question, brother? Okay. You haven't heard about the Israelites before? A little bit?
I talked to the Sons of Thunder down there.
Okay. What's your, you religious at all? What's your religious background? Christian?
No,
Not Christian.
I just believe in God.
You just believe in God? You believe in the Bible? Always? Okay, all praise to the Most High. So if you got any questions, just let me know, all right? Okay, go ahead. Okay, what's your nationality? On your father's side?
My dad's side, Sicarii, my mom.
You said what on your father's side? Okay, all right, brother. Okay, so you come from the tribe of Gad according to the Bible.
Okay, tribe, so go ahead and take a look at these tribes. This is how they've broken down the 12 tribes. If you fall into one of these categories, that's your 12 tribe.
Now here's an interesting thing. Give me God as the truth in Genesis 49. I did a presentation last year, I believe, on Native Americans being Israelites.
I am Chris Peters. It's my name. I am Pulikla, or Yurok, and Katakata, or Katak Indian. My tribes have lived in what is now northwestern California since the beginning of time. We're earth healing and earth renewal people. It is our understanding that our primary purpose in life is to heal and renew the earth. We're put here for no other reason. If you haven't realized it up to this point, please understand that Pulikla are not monotheistic. We don't have only one God. At this point, please understand that Pulikla are not monotheistic. We don't have only one God. At this point, please understand that Pulikla are not monotheistic. We don't have only one God. At this point, please understand that Pulikla are not monotheistic. We don't have only one God. And we have not evolved from an Abrahamic theology. And we have not evolved from an Abrahamic theology. And we have not evolved from an Abrahamic theology. Please understand that Pulikla are not monotheistic. We don't have only one God. And we have not evolved from an Abrahamic theology. The native paradigm, and generally in the Americas, but more specifically here in Northern California with my people, our paradigm is significantly different.
And there's a specific tribe in the southeastern region of the United States that they kept the Feast of Tabernacles, they ate kosher, right? They kept the Passover. When a woman was on her period, they kept her away. These are things that we see in the Bible. And there's something that's even more interesting, right? They had a high priest, right? They kept the Passover, like I said, things of that nature, circumcised their children.
Okay, so what he's not going to tell you is that a lot of people practice circumcision, not just Judaism. This is not a unique process. Also, all the other customs that he named were practiced by other nations who weren't Hebrews.
But what stood out to me the most is they had a headband that they wore. The priests would wear a headband. And on the headband, it would say Yatiri, Y-A-T-I-R-E, right? Now, when you look at the word Yah in Hebrew, it means him or his, right? So it said, so what does that mean on their headband? His troop. Whose troop? Him is God. Yah, him, right? It says God's troop. That's what was on their headband. So read that in Genesis 49.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him.
You look at the word Gad, it means a troop. So it said, on their headband said, God's troop. Because what? Their ancestors were of the tribe of Gad, because they make up one of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So according to the Bible, when we're teaching the so-called blacks and Hispanics and Native Americans as well, they make up the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. You got something in New Mexico called, you ever heard of the Los Lunas Stone? Los Lunas Stone. It's in New Mexico, right?
Okay, tribe. So I did a little bit of research on the Lost Lunar Stone, and nobody has any good things to say about it. Archaeologists are calling this thing out. I mean, it is not looking good. And at the end of the day, it actually is confirmed. This thing is a hoax. This thing's fake. So what are we talking about here? You got no credibility, you got no settlements, you got nothing going on, but here we are putting our faith in this
and they have
stone.
The 10 Commandments written in Hebrew. Now, how do Native Americans know Hebrew?
And we have not evolved from an Abrahamic theology.
Now, how do they? How is it that they know Hebrew? Right. So how did okay. So I've heard of that theory as well, but that doesn't make sense. I'm going to explain to you why. Number one, that stone is about 8 feet tall, and it's a big. It's in the mountain.
Okay. Now this is the Lost Lunar Stone. As you can see, it isn't to some type of rock. This is what is etched on that piece of rock at the bottom. But as you can see here, Vocab Malone wasted no time giving them the business.
You can see 3 examples here of, on the left-hand side, the Paleo-Hebrew letter style, and then on the right, the Los Lunas. We have the letters for D, H, and S, respectively. You can see that there are some very close matches, but not quite accurate, and then there are some that just are not the same at all. The point is that if the Los Lunas inscription had been made by an Israelite scribe who found his way somehow to North America, the inscription should not have these errors and these letter changes, the changes in style. The inscription should not have these errors and these letter changes, the changes in style. The inscription should not have these errors and these letter changes, the changes in style. It also, incredibly, uses a modern caret sign, that's C-A-R-E-T. Incredibly, uses a modern caret sign, that's C-A-R-E-T, sort of like that rooftop sign. That was something unknown to Hebrew manuscripts until the 16th century A.D. But
just gonna play that part again.
That was something unknown to Hebrew manuscripts until the 16th century A.D. But you actually...
One more time.
It also, incredibly, uses a modern caret sign, that's C-A-R-E-T,
What's
sort
up,
of like
Doc?
that rooftop sign. That was something unknown to Hebrew manuscripts until the 16th century AD, but you actually find it in the Los Lunas inscription. Even more, there are also grammatical mistakes in the inscription. And you can see the web page and the resources and the studies on the inscription.
It's in a mountain. Yeah, he's right. Yeah. It's engraved in a mountain. It'd be like if I went up to Stone Mountain and engraved something on the side on the side of it.
Not like a mountain, but like a rock.
Yeah, exactly. I can't take Stone Mountain and put it on a boat and go, to damn Africa and say, this is it. No, it's engraved in the side of the mountain. So even just looking at it like that, let's just say even if it was engraved in the side of the mountain, if it's a big rock and you can't just move something like that from one place to the other, and then how did they get it there? It's got the 10 Commandments written in Hebrew, all 10 in order as well.
Okay, tribe. So let's take a look at some things I was able to find offline in regards to this stone. Doesn't look too good. A lot of the individuals seem to be doubting the validity of this stone. It doesn't seem to have that real genuine marker that you would think it would have if it was so old and, full of such antiquity. And then check out the scoop. The scoop isn't any better. I mean, if we need to say any more than this, I think this would just be overkill. I think it's pretty clear that this stone is a major fraud.
In order. So then that begs the question, well, how do these people know Hebrew? Because the Hebrews are over there in the Middle East, geographically known as, right?
Los Lunas inscription had been made by an Israelite scribe who found his way somehow to North America. The inscription should not have these errors and these letter changes. The inscription should not have these errors and these letter changes, the changes in
style. How did
style.
they come over here? We'll get 2 Ezra 13 and 40.
This is the book of 2 Ezra, chapter 13, verse 40.
Okay, tribe. So as you can see here, 2 Esdras is not even recognized by the Jewish authorities, Catholic authorities, or even the Protestant groups, to say the least. I don't give this book much credibility either. Take a look at some more things from this book. Internal evidence suggests a much later date, 1st century, with other sections being written later. This is not a credible book, yet here they're using it.
Ezra chapter 13, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land.
So it said these are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land. Because you had the kingdom, these people on the side right here used to make up one nation. So-called blacks and Hispanics used to be one people, one kingdom. You said what, brother? Yeah, the northern tribes. Can you come up here real quick so I can hear you, brother? Okay, all praise the Most High.
Yeah, so you're saying the northern tribes.
The northern tribes, kind of, exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's about
Absolutely, we're going to show you. Read it again.
This is the book of 2 Ezra, chapter 13, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Oshea the king, whom Salmanassar, king of Assyria.
So now you have another artifact. Let's get another ancient relic. You have something called the Chief Joseph Stone. You ever heard of that before?
Chief, I got a Chief Joseph hat in there against it.
Ooh, yeah. So, see what had happened was, I had misread. Might be, Kawanakamish, Natusawich, Nishwa, Onionwalk.
There's a Chief Joseph Stone. The Chief Joseph Stone.
Okay, here's the Chief Joseph Stone. It's an ancient receipt that was passed down to Chief Joseph's family. And here's a picture of Chief Joseph as well.
That has, where was that from?
They got paleo, they got the paleo Hebrew on there?
Yeah, no, it's actually Assyrian. So what happened is this. He got like it's a little part of an Assyrian tablet, right? But like the brother was reading, the northern tribes went into slavery in Assyria. So he said when the white man defeated Chief Joseph, he gave it to him because he said, this is our custom. Like basically, if you can defeat me in a war, I got to give you a token, right? So he gave it to him and he said, this was handed down from my ancestors.
the renowned Nez Perce leader, surrendered to the Europeans in 1877, he gave them a special gift, and the gift was to General Nelson Appleton Miles. The gift received by the general was a pendant that turned out to be an ancient Mesopotamian cuneiform tablet. According to Benjamin Denali of the Assyrian Times, the tablet was translated by Robert Briggs, professor of Assyriology at the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago. And Professor Biggs, found that it was a sales receipt for a lamb dating back to 2040 BC. 2040 BC. Now, the chief said that the tablet had been passed down in his family for many, many generations, and that they had inherited it from their white ancestors. Had been passed down in his family for many, many generations, and that they had inherited it from their white ancestors.
Right? So they got it and they said, wait, this is Assyrian writing. How does your ancestors who was Native American, how do they have an Assyrian writing? But that's because the Northern Kingdom tribe
had inherited it from their white ancestors. Had inherited it from their white ancestors. Had inherited it from their white ancestors. Chief Joseph said the white men had come among his ancestors long ago. Chief Joseph said the white men had come among his ancestors long ago. Chief Joseph said the white men had come among his ancestors long ago. Because of Chief Joseph being a man of honor, there's no reason for him to invent any story, because this was unknown to the natives to make things up.
Toasty! In the slavery in Assyria. You see what I'm saying? So the tablet
united with them. He didn't think that the king of Assyria was going to come in and do him dirty.
You know why? I'm going to show you. Give me 2 Maccabees 4 and 15 to 17. That's beautiful that you know the history, because the Most High, he does something to us. When we make a friendship with somebody, he sends them people against us. Because what he's trying to show us is, as a nation.
Now, Tribe, for the sake of time, I want to go ahead and skip ahead to where we actually start getting into the meat of things. We're both just flexing our muscles here. Let's get into the meat of things. Let's get it to where Isaiah 53 comes involved.
The reason why you're confused is because you're not factoring in the other prophecies about the Messiah. There's prophecies about everything you said is correct. Everything you said is correct. There's also everything you said is correct. There's also everything you said is correct. There's also prophecies about that same Messiah dying. No, get Isaiah 53.
Yeah, Isaiah 53. That's another one that I had. Because 41 through 52 is the nation.
But here's the problem.
Hold on, let me build up.
No, but I know what you're going to say. How is it now not the nation?
Right.
I'm going to show you, because every single thing it says about the servant here, earlier in Isaiah it says the nation violated, right? Like, for example, it said that the servant did no violence. In Isaiah it said the servant did violence, that Israel did violence. So how is it now that the servant didn't do violence, right? And it's the nation, but Isaiah also said the nation did violence.
Because
listen, brother.
It's a servant song.
Listen, it ain't. Listen, brother. It ain't no because. That doesn't make sense. For the same God to say, if I say this brother has never done anything wrong, right? Then I turn around and say, brother, you just robbed me, right? I mean, but I just said he didn't do it. So what is it? Did he rob me, or did he never do anything wrong?
Well, Isaiah was written years apart. It was years going on. So, what my understanding of Isaiah 53 is,
but during what time?
Says, my servant.
Yeah, but what time? But what time period was it written in? It was written right before Israel goes into Babylon. That was a peak of wickedness in the nation of Israel. So there's no way that he's writing in 41, right, and or writing earlier in his writings that Israel is wicked, and then later in his writings that Israel is righteous. Why? Because Israel was wicked as hell from Isaiah 1 and 1.
So apparently, Gorilla Hebrew is unaware that God said he will always leave a righteous remnant in Israel. This righteous remnant will always be doing the things that God wants them to do. This righteous remnant was given by God so that they could always have somebody to look to. Remember, the Jews are the light to the nations forever. So there always has to be a righteous remnant giving us the examples.
He says this city is laden with blood. Basically, this city has painted itself crimson in blood. This city is Sodom. So now he's turning around and saying, nah, this city, man, they ain't never done nothing wrong. No, these niggas is wicked.
But All right, so when you get to 53, though,
Let's go.
they
We're
never
gonna get to
mention
53.
anointed. They never say prince.
Listen.
They never say Messiah. What they say is my servant.
Okay.
And then the same my servant, when you go to 41 through 52,
But here's
is Israel.
but here's the problem. Israel is totally disqualified from being the servant. I'm gonna show you. Go ahead.
This is it after this. Isaiah 53 and 12. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. Now, hold on. And he bare the sins of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
So how does the nation make intercession for the nation?
Now, tribe, we know that this can't be a human being because God has already put precepts in place that no man can die in place of another man. So we know that whoever this individual is in Isaiah 53 who's dying for anybody, well, it can't be a human being because per God, who doesn't change and he can't contradict himself, now God has put himself in a little box. And this little box is that no man can die for another man. So we can see it here. Just read through these extra verses and you'll see. I mean, this is pretty much an open and shut case. I don't think we need to dive into this anymore. It's a precept.
I need you to make sense out of 12. I understand that. You got to make, but we got to go verse for verse, and you got to make sense out of 12.
I'm going to hit 12. So in Isaiah 41, all the way up to 52, he's talking about how Israel is going through everything.
And what did he say about Israel? They're blind. What else did he say about Israel?
Right.
They're wicked.
Right.
So now he's saying they're righteous.
No.
Okay, tribe. So I want you to pay special attention to Isaiah 42, verse 19. What did Gorilla Hebrew just say? He just said Israel is blind. Well, guess who else is blind? The servant. So just like I've been saying the entire time, this servant is Israel, who is also blind. So Gorilla Hebrew, I'm sorry, but this servant who is blind is Israel.
What he
What he saying?
Israel, he means the collective group.
I know. What he saying?
Israel, he means the collective group.
I know.
You admit
Of
not
course.
all Israel's following the law. So a lot of us are blind,
Uh-huh.
but does that make us not Israel?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't make us not Israel, but what it makes us is not righteous. The point about this servant is he's righteous.
And this righteous remnant remains within Israel. So even though Israel's doing wrong, they also have the righteous remnant that remains within themselves.
Not Isaiah, not God.
Brother, this is Isaiah. Go to 52.
Isaiah 53,
Hold
down
on,
to 52,
hold on,
like 13,
brother. This is, I'm gonna tell you what's happened. This is what happened when you trust people who have stolen your identity and nationality and enslaved your ancestors with spiritual instruction.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Now I'm going to show you that it's not the Gentile nations talking. We understand that when Isaiah wrote this, it was not in chapters, right? So let's see. Okay, so read that.
Okay, it says, there is no beauty that we should... 52. Isaiah 52. Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion. Put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem.
No, Salakia. It's 52 and it's right here when it's talking about Isaiah speaking. So that's why I can know it's show him it's not the Gentile nations that speak.
It's like the end of 52.
It's like right here.
It's like 11-ish, 10.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, tribe. So this one is very important. Isaiah 52, verse 14. I need you to commit this to memory. Isaiah 52, verse 14 has to do with the description of who this servant is. So if anybody's ever trying to tell you that this servant is Jesus or this servant is this person, take them to Isaiah 52, verse 14. Here is a clear description of what this servant looks like. And his visage is unlike that of a man, and his form unlike that of the sons of men. Now, what does sons of men mean? Human. So his form is unlike that of a human. Why? Because it's Israel, and Israel is not a person. So his visage is unlike that of a man, and his form is unlike that of the sons of men. So Gorilla Hebrew, again, you are wrong. Again, the servant is Israel.
Where is this at? Because I went here last time with somebody.
Well, my point, but when y'all looking for, well, my point is that it's identified that this individual is talking about is a servant, the servant, who we know in 41.
But hold on, you're going back there. Hold on, but you're going back there. Let's stay right here. I need you to make, brother, your escape route cannot be going to 41.
Who is the servant? Loud.
Verse 8, but you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend.
You have to make it, hold on. No, but brother, okay, but you got to make sense of it. If what you're saying is true, it should be absolutely no problem. Hold on, but brother, no, it's not a song.
Isaiah 53 is the fourth of 4 servant songs. Isaiah did not mean to be puzzling. There's nothing mysterious about Isaiah 53. One of my favorite chapters. But if you have not read the chapters that introduce it, you can imagine you might be in a lot of trouble.
Isaiah did not, hold on, brother. Isaiah did not write songs, okay? That's another Jewish assertion, brother. Listen, all of that understanding, that's irrelevant. What we have to understand is you have to make sense out of these verses, right? Right. How is Isaiah saying, hold on, did the Gentile nations write the book of Isaiah?
Isaiah is speaking.
Brother, did the Gentile nations
will be speaking.
Show that to me in the book of Isaiah.
Okay, Trap. So again, the reason why they can't make sense of it, and they're asking me to make sense of it, is because they're absent of these verses. These verses are absolutely critical in understanding who is being spoken of in the 53rd chapter. Because remember, these chapter breaks are artificial. So there is no separation between these chapters. So when Isaiah is writing, he's talking about the same individual, and that's Israel. As Isaiah is speaking, he's speaking always about Israel. Israel being a servant. Israel is a servant. And remember one thing. If he wasn't speaking about Israel, why would Christians have to lie? Check this out. They've changed they to he. Now, why would you do that if you were telling the truth?
Isaiah 53 verse 8, a very interesting passage. It says there, the last 3 words, the goyim, the nations of the world are speaking. And they say the last 3 words, if you have it in Lashon Kodesh in Hebrew, the nations say, Mi pesha ami negalamo. What does that mean? For the transgress, mi pesha, as a result of the iniquities of my people, negalamo, they, the Jews, were stricken. They suffered. What does that mean? It's very simple. When the Nazis persecuted the Jews, when the Germans persecuted the Jews, who suffered? The Jews did. We suffered as a result of the bad behavior of the world's nations. Now, the word lamo means them. In Hebrew, if you don't know Hebrew, how do you say him, singular? Lo. Lo is him, lamo is them. So the text says, for the transgressions of my people, they were stricken, meaning the Jews. Now, your New International Version that you have at home, or King James, or whatever one you use, you know what they do? They can't leave it. You wouldn't believe what I'm going to say. You'll look it up for yourself. They actually change it. It says, for the transgression of my people, they were stricken, and your Christian translations change to he was stricken. The King James plays a game and says, because of our transgressions, the iniquity went there too. Just ambiguous. How do you change the word of God? How do you
all this stuff that the Jewish man told you, that's out, brother. I need you to show me. Everything that I'm telling you, I'm going right here, right? I need you to do, brother, show me where it says, this is the Gentile speaking. If what you're saying is true,
what I'm about to tell you.
No, brother, because you're not showing me anything verbatim or anything that even relatively alludes to this is the Gentile speaking.
So it's very important to understand that the speakers all the way through verse 8 are the Gentile kings of nations. It's the word of God, it's Isaiah, but Isaiah is prophetically telling us what the Gentile kings of nations will say when Mashiach comes. That's why we love this chapter. It's delicious. But yes, if I go to a place where discotheque, where Jews are dancing, Israelis are dancing. me Isaiah 1, they'll say I have no idea. And I'm dancing with two girls, and I'm...
Y'all single, y'all can have some too. Yeah, y'all single, right? Yeah. Y'all single? Y'all single? Y'all be
I'm smoking a cigarette. I don't have time for it. So of course I can do it a Christian. I'll go into a disco. People are dancing. How am I doing? I'll say you don't know anything, but that's not a proper sin. You have to go to Jews sitting and learning Torah day and night. Now, I'll say you don't know anything, but that's not a proper sin. You have to go to Jews sitting and learning Torah. I'll say you don't know anything, but that's not a proper sin. You have to go to Jews sitting and learning Torah day and night. Now, never says the word Messiah anything in there. Never says the word Messiah anything in there. Never says the word Messiah anything in there. Never. No. So then how do we know? We do know. Why? Because it's God's servant. It's talking about God's servant. So the Gentile kings and nations are surprised at God's servants. So what's the obvious question? Who is this servant? How do we know the answer? Everything is at stake, my sister. We want to know, what does Isaiah think? Who is God's servant?
Brother, who did I say is talking? You have to be comprehensive here. You hold on, brother. You listen. When the Jewish man is instructing you, you sit down with your pen and pad and you listen attentively and you comprehend what they're telling you. But when I'm telling it to you, you're having a hard time, brother. You can't do that. Listen, but it don't say the Gentiles are talking, so I reject that entire notion. Keep going. We'll get there. First we're dealing with who's talking. Because we first have to deal with that to understand that your understanding of this is impossible. But we first have to start at verse 1 to deal with who's talking. The Gentiles are not talking, brother. That's nowhere in this chapter. Right? You need to accept that because it's not there.
So who will in surprise when they see who
hold on.
So who would that be? Would that be Israel?
That's the wicked of Israel who would not believe the report of the prophets.
Which was what though? What was the report of the prophets?
The prophets had many reports, but we're going to continue on and get to the specific. Read.
It says, For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He had no form nor comeliness, and when Israel, shall see the servant, read. There is no beauty that we should desire him.
He's not going to be somebody who's extolled by the Israelites in their society while he's in the earth. Read.
He is despised and rejected of men.
People reject this guy. Read.
A man of sorrows.
This man is dealing with sorrows, right? He's sorrowful. Why do you think he wept blood? Read.
And acquainted with grief. And we hid it as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not.
Right, exactly. Go ahead.
Surely he hath...
So how did Israel not esteem Israel? Let's start again.
Who the servant
No,
was.
we haven't. You were taught by a Jewish man who the servant was. I'm teaching you something that you don't understand because you have let Jewish white people who stole your identity spiritually instruct you, which is a violation of the Bible. You understand that? No, brother. Did you learn your breakdown from Jewish people? Yes, all the notes you took. You already admitted when you stood here. But who do you lean towards? What did you say standing right here? You lean towards who? No, you said you lean towards Judaism. You said that.
Judaism as far as my faith. I believe in the one God of Israel.
So what does that mean? You lean towards Judaism as your faith, meaning what? You take instructions from Jewish people. Jewish people stole your identity and enslaved your ancestors. Jewish people are not Jewish people. They're not the Israelites. You have let people who stole your birthright instruct you spiritually. That's on you. Read. But understand, you let your slave master give you spiritual instruction the same as a Christian do, and you're erring in the same way. Read.
Verse 4. Surely he hath borne our griefs.
So Israel bore Israel's griefs?
They bear the sins of the whole world. Look at what's happening to Israel.
Okay, so you're telling me, hold on. So Israel bore the transgressions. Israel is a sacrifice. Hold on. Israel. So wait a minute. So
the world is wicked. Israel hates.
So
Speaking in this chapter of the Gentile kings of nations. How do you know? Because it says it. In Isaiah 52, verse 15, and those of you who have a Bible, please read it for yourself. It says there that he will cast down many nations before him. Kings will go, oh! Kings will, for what they will see, kings will be astonished because what they will see is like nothing they ever heard, and what they will witness is like nothing they had ever considered. And the kings of nations asked the question of 53:1. Me, hem, and lishmua seinu, that's plural. Who would have believed this, what we are hearing, shmua, shema, uzraya Hashem, and the arm of God, al mi niglasa, upon whom was it revealed? And he grew up like a sapling before it, in dry ground. Who would have believed such a thing? So it's very important to understand that the speakers all the way through verse 8 are the Gentile kings of nations.
how many billions of dollars does the world give to Israel?
We give Saudi Arabia billions.
No. They give a lot. No. First off, Donald Trump just invaded Saudi Arabia today. So.
Okay, tribe, so we're going to go ahead and cut it off right here. Thank you for coming on down and watching this debate. But the most important thing before you leave is I need you to understand something. I need you to understand, do not be taken a fool. The Sicarii Hebrew Israelites and all the Hebrew Israelite camps are trying to push a narrative. And they're trying to push the narrative that Jesus Christ somehow is outlined in the Hebrew scriptures. He's not. And we prove that. But we're going to do this one at a time. So today we're just going to deal with Isaiah 53. And what was the information from Isaiah 53? Well, if you remember, the Christians in Isaiah 53, verse 8, had to change the they to he in order to make it look Christological. So that's 1 point for us. The second point for us is Isaiah 52, verse 14. It gives the description of the servant. And the description of the servant is a description of something that's form is not of the sons of men, and his visage is nothing that of a man. So this is not a man, it's not a human being. So feel comfortable when you tell them that. And feel comfortable going back to the verses to show them that. Then go to Isaiah 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, all the ones that we brought up today. And you can actually show them that Israel is identified in these chapters as the servant. And lastly, remember that these chapters had no chapter break. So there was no Isaiah 41, 42, and 43. So all that goes out the door. So Isaiah is always talking about this same individual, which is Israel. Okay? So tribe, before we get out of here, just remember one important thing. The most important thing about our debate is that me and Gorilla Hebrew locked it up at the end. We all left on good terms. So much respect to those brothers and what they do. Much respect to the Sicarii Hebrew Israelites. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So with that said, tribe, Aquanini Tampawag.